Okay, so now we'll discuss the elimination reactions of alcohol substrates. And I want to remind you that this is synonymous with what we mean by dehydration, or elimination of an alcohol is going to involve the loss of water. So consider a chiral tertiary alcohol. We know that this alcohol will not undergo elimination or substitution upon treatment with a nucleophile or base because he's a nucleophile himself. So we must activate it first by adding some electrophilic reagent, such as a strong acid. So generally, for dehydration, we're going to use sulfuric and or phosphoric acid. And these are mineral acids that are fundamentally different in their reactivity as opposed to hydrohalic or HX additions. Mineral acids have non-nucleophilic conjugate bases. The conjugate bases of these, like sulfate, phosphate, hydrogen sulfate, etc., they're extensively resonance stabilized, and they don't have the nucleophilicity that bromide, chloride, and iodide did. That is why we get elimination, not substitution.